non-consensual kink that actually oftentimes happens in first kink encounters. Not necessarily bad, but many of us have had he pulled my hair and I liked it. He called me dirty names and she called me terrible things and I liked it. Did I consent to it? No.
Our guest today in the lab is Midori, a sexologist, educator, author, artist, and one of the pioneering voices in modern kink education. She wrote the first English language instructional book on Japanese rope bondage and has spent decades teaching about BDSM and alternative sexuality. Midori is also the director of Sexual Health Alliance's Kink-Informed certification program. Join us as we learn more about Midori's personal journey into the sexual health space. Explore what it was like for her teaching BDSM when it was deeply stigmatized, and what changed and didn't change when kink was depathologized in the DSM-5 in 2013. If you want to learn more from the queen of kink education, you don't want to miss this one. Welcome to Sexology Lab. Each week, we speak with the most compelling minds in modern sexology to ask the questions shaping the future of desire, connection, and human wellness. Let's dive in. Welcome, Midori.
Hi. Thanks for having me, and hi out there.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm interested to hear a little bit about your origin story and how you found your way into the sexual health space, specifically the kink and BDSM space. And what's something that listeners might be surprised to learn about you?
Let's see, the supervillain origin story. Well, the alien spacecraft crash landed on, no, I can't tell you that story. I'm born and raised in Japan. I'm born and raised in Japan to an academic family and also with interest in traditional arts, but also living in a rather old working class neighborhood. And instead of going to an international school, I was going to public school and being regular Japanese kid with a very smarty pants household. I immigrated to the US at the age of 14, at which point, a lot of people might not know this part, I did not read or write in English
Really?
and only spoke a family pidgin. It does affect perspective as well as my speech pattern and cadence as well. In terms of perspective, not growing up in North America, but rather growing up in Japan in a very different culture. Yes, it is an economically progressed country. However, it is an entirely different culture with perspective on sexuality. Neither better nor worse,
Yeah.
but different. I don't come from a background of Judeo-Christian and American Judeo-Christian background on attitudes around sexuality. And I say American because Europe is going to be different, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in this very interesting mix of Buddhism, Shintoism, capitalism, pragmatism, and sexual guilt and shame, very different. I don't come from neither is the big guy watching you and any activity is sin or not, and different kinds of social pressure. So my perspective on that I am a step or two outside of internalized norms means that I have been questioning all along the way, why do we do the things we do?
Yeah.
Why this particular attitude around sexuality? And I will get asked about, oh, when did you realize or come out into kink and being kinky? And I'll get asked that a lot. And my answer is, I never have. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, coming out means I had to be in a closet. I wasn't in a closet. That's not to say that freaky hentai weirdo sex in Japan is happening in every street corner.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, there are the places to go there, but usually they're in the red light district and the entertainment quarters. What it is in Japan is there's the behavior that's appropriate in certain spaces. Taking behavior out of its appropriate context is where you have social shame, as opposed to objective guilt and wrongness. It's subjective and contextual. So as a kid and a young person growing up in Japan, I'm walking by the porn theater, peak. I'm walking
Peak.
by the temple. I'm walking by the shrine. I'm walking by the vending machine with the porn in it. I'm in a bookstore that has the kiddie manga as well as the X-rated manga. There are the places where I see things. There are places when I internalize things. There are places that I am seeing symbolism and representation in popular media. in the way that you do in the United States and Canada and other American countries, right? So
Yeah.
I'm absorbing it differently. But in Japan, it is so often about the collectivist culture and subjective appropriateness. So that meant as an adult, sexually active adult in the United States, I just thought people were all doing creative sexual things and they just weren't talking about it because it
Yeah.
was polite. Then I think it was like in my late 20s or early 30s, because I was in San Francisco by then. So it was my late 20s, early 30s when I realized outside of Japan, outside of San Francisco, people were experiencing their internal struggle around kink and alternate sexuality very differently. So,
Mm.
no, it's not that everyone's doing this stuff. Actually, a lot of people aren't, but want to. And then diving into and understanding the internal conflict and the social norm and conditioning that North Americans are experiencing. And that perspective led to curiosity, inquiry, constant questioning to people, which I think when I was in my early stages of learning, discovering, and teaching, I must have been really annoying. Because I mean, well, why? Why? So, for example,
Hey.
humiliation play class, a lot of people would say, and I'm very proud of that because my analysis of the practical emotional structure and modeling of humiliation play, as a result of me spending about 5 years in my earlier days going, well, you like humiliation play. Why? Because it's hot.
Yeah.
Why is it hot? Because it's hot. Can you tell me more? My God, get out of my face. So, with all that pursuit, and similarly with other topics as well, questioning the norm. So, growing up in a different culture with a different value system, even a different linguistic structure, and different language of expressing sensation, different language around expressing desire, even the cadence of my speech. And I know that's for some people, I might speak a little more slower than they'd like, but I'm composing as I'm speaking. And there's a certain poetic cadence and a grammatical cadence that also comes from Japan, which apparently some people like. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think it always makes you very interesting to listen to. And also, I feel like you have a very calming presence. So, what do you think the biggest differences are between how sex is viewed in North America, United States culture, and how sex is viewed in Japan?
Over in Japan, there is a sensory sensuality. So the focus on the whole body of sensation, of the seduction of languid sensations. And
Mm.
there's even this bathing lube that's called nuru nuru, which is essentially like sexy jello. So it's not necessarily about the penetration, but it's a sensory thing. And I think that comes from a long culture of sensation, of enjoying food, nature, bathing. There's a whole lot focus on sensation and sensuality. And that shows up in the art, the poetry, and the smut. Yeah, it's not always penetration focused. It's not denying it. It's part of the fun, but there's also the tension. It's almost like artistic pleasure, sensual edging for everyone.
Yeah.
Then there's the transgressiveness because it is a collectivist culture playing with shame and being outside of that. So that which is oftentimes grotesque. Oh, speaking of grotesque, there is this thing called eroguro, Eroguro. It's contraction of the erotic grotesque, that not everything is pretty. So you get
Mm.
something like even Japanese horror. When you think about The Ring, there is a sensuality to it. It's not just right? There is a slow sensuality and tension. The grotesque, so you get like tentacle porn.
Yeah.
It's the grotesque, it's transgressive, and I would even connect eroguro with, keep with me on this leap, eroguro with wabi-sabi. And wabi-sabi is a Japanese philosophical, artistic, aesthetic concept of that which is rough-hewn.
Mm.
So a traditional tea bowl, ceremonial tea bowl, might look chunky and it's not smooth porcelain. It's not like a Tang Dynasty porcelain. It looks chunky, it looks rough hewn, it looks imperfect. And in the imperfection, in the messiness, in the intentional disfigurement of perfection, that there is a beauty. And I think
Mm.
that also translates into the sensuality, whereas I do find that in the United States, there is a discomfort with imperfection and obsession with what must be beautiful. And along with Eroguro, and I mentioned the Ring, Japanese ghost stories, full of tragic femme fatales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sadness and grief and quietude also weave through what I notice in sexuality often expressed in Japan. Now, this is also from my own personal research going back to Japan, talking, reading, my internal explorations. The thing that's not all that great is a lack of what here in North America we would call negotiation, whether it is in kinky sex or non-kinky sex of, hey, do you want to? What are you into? What are you not into? This is what I'm interested in tonight. This is what I'm not interested in. And here's how I'd like us to feel in the encounter we're having. You would think with all the fantastic, freaky, kinky, rope bondage, porn, hentai stuff coming out of Japan, that there is negotiation.
There's not.
Not in the way that we know it. It is a monoculture and monolinguistic. It is not a polyglot, diverse culture in the way that North America and much of Europe. Well, that means that, okay, so if, say, you and I were to pick up play, I have no idea what your sexual vision and desires tonight are. I'm going to be worried about what is Michelle into tonight. I know that last time she was into this and that, but we're different peoples. We are each an island of desire. So I need to find out what's on your offering, what's on your menu, what you explain. I cannot assume your erotic background, your desire, your appetites. And for that matter, while we speak English, you and I have, because different regions, we even have different culinary background and we have different ways of phrasing things. Whereas in Japan, so the assumption of similarity of sexual desire, but also the avoidance of direct communication and avoidance of no. Boundaries are and limits are implied. That means that if you're not from Japan and cultured in Japan, coming in, you're going to notice that people don't talk about things. Like if I go to a kink bar or a private party, you'll notice when I take you there that people aren't talking about it, but they just go into things. There's also a lot of repetitive patterns of action because there's a lot of internalizing of this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, I've taught kink classes in Japan, right? I've even taught rope bondage classes in Japan. And what makes it different is I'm introducing pre-play conversation. Now, before I started teaching in Japan a bit here and there, I had to have an internal struggle of, am I engaging in cultural imperialism and colonialism by bringing in Californian idea of negotiation and structure? I had to struggle with that because there are enough people coming into Japan historically saying this is a way to be done. So instead, I approach this as add this to your arsenal. Ask some questions. Are you sure this is what you want? Are you sure this is what the other person wants? And you can be poetic and sensual in terms of finding a common ground.
Are you curious about sexology? Do you want to further integrate sexology into your work or your life? Well, friends, then we've got something just for you. It's called the Sexology Practice Guide, and it walks you through the ways this shows up in your work, in your life, and guides you through working within your scope, incorporating intimacy and sexual health into your work without starting over. Download this short, practical guide at sexologylab.com/guide. That's sexologylab.com/guide. And while you're here, make sure to subscribe and share. And now, back to the show.
For the professionals out there listening in, I want to talk about professional harm. And so, what are some of the biggest mistakes that either sex therapists, educators, coaches, other professionals out there still make when working with kinky clients?
Okay, so a common one that I hear from my students, the harm done by mental health professionals who have internalized fear, bias, and prejudice around BDSM and kink. And they've probably been trained in the pre-2013 model of the idea of all BDSM being trauma-based or being harm, or it's a step towards violence, it's step towards exploitation, you're sick, wrapped in therapy language, and you need fixing and you need to be cured from kink. That's harm. Okay.
Yeah.
Then there is the, oh, okay, I get that you're kinky and I see that it must be rooted in trauma. Let's find that and fix you. So again, the person's sexuality and really game playing being made wrong. My definition of BDSM is childhood joyous play with adult privilege and cool toys. It's cops and robbers with shagging optional. So I'm leaning into the serious leisure model and environmental enrichment model. Yes, there is also the identity model side of things as well. And again, this is continually developing. So you've got this is sick and you need to be fixed, people, professionals, and everything that's wrong in your life is because you're a sicko. Then there is the overly curious, right? Somebody comes in for relationship discord issues or discordant appetite and desire. And it's like, oh, you're kinky and your partner isn't. Tell me more about kink. Yeah, I'm making this exaggerated, but having the client, the patient, or your student being the one to educate. I need to be educated on that individual person's history, but I don't need them to educate me on their culture, right? And the culture can be culture of the nation they come from, culture of religion, culture of sexuality. That doesn't need to be my job. Then there is I came in because we have relationship issues. Well, your relationship issue must be because of the kink. Sure, the affair was with another kinky person, but the kink kind of wasn't the point, but it's in the container of kink, so that must be the problem. You got that one.
I want to talk for a second about the term consensual kink, because is there non-consensual kink?
So there's consensual non-consent, which is the game playing of, no, don't do the things that I actually really love, but you're taking charge of me, so I get to be a pillow queen, yay. The game playing part of the cops and robbers game, right? So that's consensual non-consent and comes in a lot of forms. Not consensual kink. That actually oftentimes happens in first kink encounters. Not necessarily bad, but many of us have had he pulled my hair and I liked it. He called me dirty names and she called me terrible things and I liked it. Did I consent to it? No. Okay, so there you have what I'm going to call benign non-consensual sadism masochism, right? So there's benign masochism, right? Eating hot sauce. Benign non-consensual kink is like, ooh, you pulled my hair and I liked it. You bit my nipple too hard and I liked it. You called me boss bitch and I liked it. Or, it's like, I saw this in porn, let's do it. Without necessarily going through the planning phase. Okay, benign non-consensual kink. Did I just invent a term? I think I just did. Not all oopsie or non-consensual kink is necessarily harmful. Oftentimes we discover it that way. Maybe I did too. Viewers, listeners, sometimes hot vanilla slips into kink discovery. Am I gonna shame somebody or wag my finger and say, you did not negotiate and you didn't do that right? That's when I'm like, that happens to a lot of people. What did you like about it? And do you want to do it, try it again, but would you like to better? Then there's non-consensual kink, which will include coercion, which will include more nefarious things. And sometimes non-consensual kink may also come from not bad intention. If somebody's been having a habit of, with say previous lovers, spanking, hair pulling, biting, and that was the sex life that they were imprinted to, got in the habit of, and they have a new lover who has never experienced that and maybe doesn't like it. That's also non-consensual kink. Was it evil, terrible, and reportable? This is maybe where tools of communication and accountability comes in. Then there's I'll call it the manipulative assholes. So now we're heading towards intentional exploitation, and on the worst of it would be criminal. Ranges of non-consensual. Just because we didn't talk about it before? Is it you pulled my hair and I liked it? Or is it, I did not agree to be locked into your basement for 7 years range?
And I think that's important because somebody might hear the term non-consensual and be like, okay, anything non-consensual is that. locked in a basement for 7 years, extreme situation. So I think that distinction is very important.
I remember talking to somebody, this was a friend conversation, where apparently when, teenagers exploring in the dark, he did not know that he went in the wrong hole of his cis female partner. Like, what? And he was like, "Oh, it was dark. It was a back seat. I had no idea the anatomy." I guess they kept dating, so at least for a while.
Hey.
We were both exploring. They were fucking around with fucking and found out.
Yeah,
So there's a whole range of non-consensual, huh?
there is. And I want to circle back to the therapist. So let's say you are a therapist. How can you let your clients know that you are comfortable talking
Yeah.
about kink and that you have this education?
I remember a conversation with Dr. Charlie Mosier, who's a very out physician and mental health professional, and also one of the many people responsible for changing DSM. He told me to convey to the mental health folks that if you are, whether a physician or mental health, that if you are known for serving a marginalized community like kink and like queer, you will have more clients than you can deal with, because there are more people who are genuinely not trained in that. And then there are going to be the people who are familiar with it or themselves kinky or queer, but not out about it. So you get to a narrower scope, right? Things that you can do. There is the Kink Aware Professionals listing, but there's
Yeah.
also in your various website, in your cards, in conversations, make clear around what kind of clients and population you like working with. And like gay and lesbian therapists who took the lead in being out, if you're willing to be out about your humanity, might not be possible for where you're at or your various licensing, but there are also ways to put in the code words. And there are also reaching out to good colleagues that don't have that specialty, right? When I'm meeting, actually, this has happened with my GP, my general practitioner doctor, and I think I had my feet in the stirrups and I'm getting my annual. We're just making small talk about professions. And I'm like, she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm a sexuality educator. She's like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I said, "Yes, I specialize in BDSM." She's like, "Huh, I don't know much about that. I am available should you or any of your patients need resources. Let me know." So
Yeah.
with my feet in the stirrups, a speculum up my body, I was saying, "Hey, doc, I'm available."
Always networking.
Right? That was pretty funny.
That's a good one.
And might be surprising, and I had another physician, this was OBGYN, where I also was outing myself, and she put in just enough keywords to signal to me. So for those of you who are able to be out in some way or another, do so. And there are enough coded language, or you might just be direct and say, "I serve population that." Insert. I serve population of kink BDSM couples, menopausal women, immigrant population, etc., etc., etc. And you become trustable. One therapist, lovely man from years ago, gay man and kinky, and I think it was a year into just regular therapy where, "Okay, therapist, I have a question about male experience of fisting. Are you open to telling me the subjective sensation experience?" And he did.
Yeah.
And it was so helpful. I'm not a cis guy. I don't know
Yeah.
what it feels like. I also don't know what it's like as a cis male socialized to experience that. And I wanted to figure out what was happening physically and emotionally with a date that I had. It was so nice to just ask him.
I want to circle back to talking about the DSM-5 changes because we mentioned it earlier. And now that was in 2013. And do you think those changes truly shifted attitudes among professionals, or does the stigma still remain underneath?
DSM-5 in declassifying consensual BDSM has certainly made an impact for the newer, I don't mean by age, but in career, the newly trained professional. That is not to say that the stigma doesn't exist. It still does. As per my comments earlier, even those who have been trained recently, it depends on who and how they've been trained. It depends on the water they're swimming in, if you will, if they are in a conservative culture or not. and who they're learning from. Who's their supervisor?
Yeah, on a micro level, it matters.
Yeah, it is making change. The DSM-5 is not perfect. It never will be. It is an evolving document that is a product of the culture we are in. And the mental health and medical profession is still white, male, colonized. It's transphobic, queerphobic, and there's a lot of room for improvement. I'm not saying let's throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? How about we feed it better?
Yeah, because many of you just look back on our history from not too long ago. There's horrific things in the DSM. We can see that past and recognize that, hey, we're not going to take this as 100% accurate for all time.
And to you, the viewer and listener, if you are a researcher, if you are a clinician, if you are a technical writer, if you are politician, if you are leadership in your career field, or even if you're not a leader, you have an opportunity to impact somebody else, right? From peer therapist to peer therapist, or inviting a therapist that you know is not kink-informed to an educational event. But if you are somebody that can step up to change the DSM, to change how things are taught, yeah, there are professional risks, but if you're willing to take it, we thank you. And it's something to consider. So for some of you out there, this is my prompt I'm giving you, that how can you positively change the mental health and medical and sex education field in the way that you are amazing at.
I love that. All right. I want to jump into our lightning round. What's one thing people get wrong about BDSM?
One thing people get wrong about BDSM is that it is not practiced by a lot of people. Wrong.
It's so rare. Nobody really does
Nobody
it,
does
right?
Only weird people do it. Wherever it is you're next in a crowded space, I want you to look around and go, at least half of the people here have had kinky thoughts. At least 1 out of 5 have done something, and 1 out of 10 probably did it last night.
What's one conversation professionals still avoid too often?
Well, might be about owning up to our own biases, right? And our blind spots. I mean, this is what SAR is for.
Yeah.
And our judgments and owning it. There are kink practices that I'm kind of squeaked by, and I'll own it. And if that's information somebody needs, I need to own it in one way or another, probably gently to them so they don't feel judged, that it's really me, not you. And I need to either refer otherwise and probably also educate myself. But yeah, owning up to our own biases and judgment. And this also includes the overly positive biases and judgment.
That's a good one. All right. Now, what's one book that changed the way you think about sexuality?
The first book that comes to my mind that impacted how I reflect upon sexuality would be my favorite fiction book, Junichiro Tanizaki's 7 Japanese Tales. And those stories are very challenging to read. And it's very much rooted in Japanese culture. And by reading it, I had to reflect upon my own desires and the formation of my own desire. And so it was like putting a mirror up to my face around what made me into the sexual being that I am.
What is one quality that makes someone truly feel safe in an intimate relationship?
Empathy. Empathy equals listening skills. And that's not easy for so many of us with however it is that we grew up in the context we live in. And I think empathy also and listening requires slowing down. And we live in a hella fast culture, and a culture that's not comfortable with moments of quiet.
So we've talked about this a little bit throughout the interview, but you are the director of Sexual Health Alliance's Kink-Informed certification program. So why is this type of education and advanced certification important for professionals and people who want to become more kink-informed?
Kink-Informed certification is essential for clinicians and educators and helping professionals who are dealing with humans and their sexuality. It's going to come up somewhere. It's going to come up, and you need to be ready. You might actually be serving a population that you know are kinky, but even if you don't know it, remember, at least half of the people have thought about it, and 1 out of 10 doing it. So look across your clients. Can you serve them better? Can you be more compassionate? Can you be more resourceful? Can you be better at what it is that you do? And you'll be serving humanity.
Absolutely. All right. My last question for you. What gives you hope about the future of sexuality education?
One of the many things that gives me hope about the future of sexuality education is the generation that's coming up that is questioning the top-down authority mode of education and training, and that the perspective of 20th century model of sex education is not working. The thing that's unique about Kink-Informed certification with Sexual Health Alliance is it does not require prerequisite in terms of you have to be a doctor or you have to have this educational background. And the reason is that we recognize that sexuality education happens in all sorts of places. Being a helping professional, sure, you could be a therapist, but you can be a school counselor, or you can be that best friend in your circle of gal pals that always has the answer. Who are we to gatekeep how we get healthy, safe, accurate information out there and to strive towards curiosity and betterment?
Very well said, Midori. All right. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you for joining us in the lab today.
Thank you. And I am looking forward to the next kick session and ASEC and all the Shaw stuff.
Yes, all the Shaw stuff. I love it. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Bye. The Sexology Lab is powered by Sexual Health Alliance, the global leader in education and certification for sexology professionals. Since 2015, Shaw has trained thousands of therapists, coaches, educators, and healthcare professionals through industry-leading certification programs and events. Learn directly from the experts, participate in immersive learning experiences, and join the most connected global community in sexology. Learn more at sexualhealthalliance.com.
Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. Links are in the description below.